Welcome, everyone, to the Stockbridge Library's online poetry series, Medicine for the Soul. This program was started by the president of our Board of Trustees, John Gillespie, who is with us here today, and will be in conversation with our poet, Karren Alenier. And a little bit about Karren before we get started. She is the author of 7 collections of poetry. Looking for Divine Transportation was the 2002 winner of the Towson University Prize for Literature. The Anima of Paul Bowles was a 2016 top staff pick at Boston's Grolier Books. And her 8th collection, How We Hold On, launched this spring. So we are delighted to have Karren with us. She will read some poetry for us, and perhaps she might discuss her opera, Gertrude Stein Invents a Jump, early on, which premiered in 2005 in New York City. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Karren. And thank you for being here. And John, thank you as well.
Yeah, Wendy, thanks for the introductions. And Karren, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So we start every week with just a few questions so we can understand the poet's creative process. So Karren, 2020, even 2021, the themes have been dramatic. The pandemic, racial injustice, income inequality, the whole political scene. It's just vaccination, anti-vaxxers. I feel like there's a whole nother dictionary has been created over the last year. So how or have some of those themes kind of shown up in your work?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that all along I've been tuned into those kinds of themes. And, like the issue of race has been part of my landscape, for as long as I can remember. I've been aware of that. And I've also been, kind of wondering how, as somebody who is white is perceived when she, addresses such topics. But I would say predominantly this year, I've been immersed in themes about breakables, everything from a plaster ceiling falling to the mental health of Marilyn Monroe. So, and this is all brought on by the fact, that for the loss of my husband, Jim, who this book, How We Hold On, is dedicated to. So that's my answer, more or less.
No, it's a good one. So how does the creative process start for you? We've heard from so many different people. It could be a conversation, reading someone else's work, things rolling around in your head. How do things really kind of kick off for you?
Well, interestingly, this go round, the pandemic made me think of my great grandfather who died in the 1918 Spanish flu. And I started writing letter poems to him right out of my sleep. I would wake up, with this idea on my mind, and I would just get to my journal, which was by my bedside, and start writing. So that's partly how my process might work.
And then obviously you've published a lot of work. How do you know when something is ready to be in a book? We know poems are never finished, so how do you know when something's ready to graduate into being published?
That's a really hard question to answer because sometimes you even when you get something published, it still might not be as good as it should be. So but there comes a point at which you have to let go of things And, so there's that balance between those two things. Is it done and is it ready? You present it to the public as much as you can, and that helps you determine, I think, the reception that you get.
Well, that's great. No, I'm a cookie baker, and since we have a convection oven and a regular oven, I'm always peering in to see or touch the cookies. So is it ready? Is it done? Is it not done? And yeah, I could twirl around the kitchen a lot just trying to figure that out. No, great answers. So, please share some of your work with us today.
Okay. Well, on the occasion of Mother's Day, I've decided to read 10 poems from How We Hold On, where a mother figure appears. Sometimes the mother figure is my mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, but sometimes the person is me or someone I met who impressed me. Much to my surprise, these 60 poems seem to have more than half of them dealing with a mother figure. So I'd like to start with a poem about a woman I met on an island in Greece. Through marriage, she became part of the family of a friend who took me there. And I open section 1 of my book with this titled section, Mama's Not a Trapezoid. And in this poem, I want to make the point that the image of the mother does not always fit neatly into a box. Also note that while I use rhyme through this poem, unlike many other poems in this book, The Funny Guy and His Origins, that's the actual title, it is not named a named form. The rhyme, though, is insistence that may make you think of a word I do not use in this poem. So if you like, you can put that word in the chat after I read the poem. See if you can guess what that word that I didn't use might be. The Funny Guy and His Origins. Baba is a sea captain sleeping opposite corners of his bed. I am a funny guy pressing my face against glass. Mama is a linguist translating what her boys said. Mama cannot sleep with Baba because she's not a trapezoid. How did this funny guy come to be fed? Baba sleeps catty corner even on land to protect his head. Baba lives in fear that his petrol tanker will explode. Can you tell me why this funny guy is seeing red? Greek, German, English. Mama dresses her last word with dread. I am their funny guy, beachhead, thoroughbred, featherbed. Next, I'm going to introduce you to my mother. The poem is entitled Hope and appears in section 2, Girl Talk, of How We Hold On. In this poem, she is a teenager during World War II. Hope. And it begins with an epigraph as follows. According to the legend, a curse befell the large blue diamond plucked from the third eye of an idol in India. My mother wore the Hope diamond, that exquisite gem said to curse all who touched it. Picture this, a society renegade, Evelyn Walsh McLean, entering a ward at Walter Reed, removing from her neck what she called her lucky charm, letting this legless private, that handless sergeant, and finally, my teenage mother, a candy striper in love with fashion, feel the weight of that intensely blue stone that if set in the sun would phosphoresce red. Imagine that necklace purchased in Paris from Pierre Cartier by the headstrong young woman who eloped against her family's wishes with the heir of the Washington Post fortune. Envision my raven-haired, high-cheekboned, ruby-lipped mama who married 5 times, that the lonely girl who cherished the letter her daddy wrote from a battleship in the South Pacific, wishing his princess Rona a sweet 16, and she standing with a long line of kings, Louis XIV, Louis XV, Louis XVI, who all wore this crown jewel. Maybe the curse in touching those 45.52 carats accounts for why she was never satisfied. Now I want you to meet me as a teenager talking about my mother. The poem is entitled Girl Talk, which gives section 2 of How We Hold On its name. The poem is a prose poem, which means that it has no line breaks like a traditional poem. You can judge for yourself whether you find it poetic. Girl Talk. And this has an epigraph from Edna St. Vincent Millay as follows. But the rain is full of ghosts tonight that tap and sigh upon the glass and listen for a reply. In the early 60s, my party girl mother, not even a high school graduate, asked her eldest child, she had 6, if she, and that would be me, liked Edna St. Vincent Millay. No, I replied, in keeping with the intellectual snobism of the day, tilting my chin to the sky and rolling my eyes. I added, no one likes romantic poetry. But I was a teenager, and my mother, not even 2 decades ahead of me, who reveled in mistaken identity, making her my slightly older sister, would not be put off. How about Rumi? Why and how she came to ask these questions never occurred to me then. Had she read these authors? Had someone else, not likely her husband, dear dad, not the sire of my making, who hid in the upstairs bathroom reading about relativity, he too lacking a high school diploma? Who had read these poets, their poems? Certainly not my mother with her love of fashion magazines. Still, why was she asking? And did she believe I was a microcosm of her life, a way to know herself? Or was this just the best girl talk she could muster with a daughter who read books she did not understand? You can see I was quite a handful, but my mother seemed undaunted. The next poem, Letting the Back Door Slam, introduces my maternal grandmother. In this 6-part poem, I am in serious conversation with her as we talk about her disappointment in not being able to finish school because her father, my great-grandfather, died during the 1918 pandemic. My grandmother was the oldest child, and she and her brother were sent out to work so the family of 5 children would not starve. The format of this poem, section by section, alternates with the conversation between my grandmother and me and an omniscient narrator who makes commentary on the state of education. The poem was inspired by a painting by Jackie Avery of Portland, Oregon. She and I participated in a secret global arts project called Telephone, which debuted on the internet in April. You can find out about the project at https://phonebook.gallery. I'm putting the link in the chat if you want to see it. At the time, my book went to print, I did not know the name of the artist whose work inspired my poem. Letting the back door slam. 1. That which you cannot see coming. Something is ringing. Where? Can't say. From the floor, PS 61, Baltimore, 1953. No, child, the story is mine. 1918, Daddy dies. We don't know why. Grandma Etta, dark hall. All the doors are closed. We hug our knees. Please, we don't want to die. Darling girl, you go to school right out the back door of my Polish mother's boarding house. Me, I was yanked from class to work in the garment factory. My Polish Jewish daddy dead. What was in my head didn't matter. 2. Factory fare. Any fool knows modern public school is factory fare. Early 19th century Prussians pushed the young of unwashed populace into state-run schools to produce docile factory workers who would come to work on time, who would follow orders, who would not ask questions. Early schools were not for girls. 3. She read letters. I watched your mama, we all called her Nana, open the box, remove a letter from your papa. He wrote poetry to her, my great-grandfather who died from the Spanish flu. Yes, I could read books, sign my name, add and subtract. I made Isaac, my father, proud until he passed. The nightmare started when we moved from Baltimore. I told the only dad I had, he was my mom's second. I saw bad pictures like Frankenstein in the dark movie theater, but I wanted to walk that couple of miles to 3rd grade where Sissy, my sister aunt, was in 4th grade. I told my daughter Sissy, marry well, education is a luxury. Me, I had 5, 2 still at home, a Russian husband who left for a shiksa barfly. He only wanted sex. She wanted kids, but proved barren. 4. Public school punishment. Here are the states that still punish school kids. Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Wyoming. In loco parentes, many states of the United States allow public school officials to paddle student behinds, boys and girls, for as little as talking in class, tardiness, taking a bathroom break without permission, corporal punishment banned in Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand. New Jersey banned such punishment 1867, Maryland 1993, North Carolina 2018 in every district, but not statewide. Private schools, another matter. Only New Jersey and Iowa banned. 5. In the absence of a palm reader. Of my mother's 6, only I achieved a college degree. If I asked from a telephone booth, "What's a rumble?" we moved. If I complained about a bully stealing change from my lunch tray, we moved. I graduated from a public high school where 98% were Jewish, and most of my class went to college. Not one of my 5 got more than a high school diploma. Your mother not even that. I didn't need a palm reader to predict my success straight out of university degree in French Lit. I landed a federal job computing. What I could do was learn. I learned nothing by leaving my faithless husband who didn't come home at night, except I couldn't get a job. All the factories gone, turned into shops with latticed ceilings and sawdust on the floor to cover the old blood. 6. Lifelong learner. No age limit on learning. Be your own teacher. Chart our path with tools you choose. YouTube, podcasts, massive open online courses, MOOCs, sample, new fair. Keep a learning list with stated goals. Ask questions until you get understanding. Practice, practice, practice. Choose a career where you learn, where you are challenged. Form an ongoing discussion group to explore books, poetry, or speak a second language. Pursue projects and hobbies. Write books, give speeches, improve your memory, stay off the couch. The poem I just read, Letting the Back Door Slam, is from those dear ones, the last section of the book. And so is the next one. The title is 24 March 2020. The poem is in the form of a letter to my great-grandfather, but it also speaks of 4 generations of mothers. I asked my great-grandfather if I should call him Zadie. Zadie is Yiddish for grandfather, but I also say we did not call his wife, my great-grandmother, Bubby. 24 March 2020. Dear great-grandfather Isaac, or should I call you Zadie, we were destined for this conversation. Chosen by Nana Pearl, mother of my mother's mother, we did not call her Bubby. I hold your eyeglasses, your letters stitched with poetry, the brooch with your photo, things a loving widow showed a 5-year-old, me. My son, his Hebrew name, Yitzhak, is your name. My son, Ivan, looks like you. His birth, no accident. Your hand guided mine in choosing his father, that same Polish heritage. What is it about the stuff of life? DNA, egg and sperm, some name it stardust, that forms us. You sired 5 children. Your first, my grandmother Etta. I called her mom. She was sent with her brother Manus to work, plucked from school after the Spanish flu took you, 1918. And now, 2020, year of perfect vision, a new pandemic. This widow, me, sees. I wrote 6 of these poem letters to my great-grandfather. Here's the next one. 25th March, 2020. Dear Zadie, do you mind if I call you that? Or does that name mark you as refugee from old country? Nana Pearl spoke English same way I do. You both born in London as your families fled Poland for America. Was English your first language? Where did I learn Yiddish words and phrases? Did Nana Pearl tuck them into her talk as she needed challah for Friday night Shabbos? They didn't spring from the box of things that kept you alive for her. That box she opened for me to share her love for you. Names are important, as indicated in this love poem from section 3. The relevance of mint. I breathe mint from his garden, preferring rose hips and lemon verbena. My lover grows peppermint and spearmint for my tea generously. Today I snip stalks and share the aromatic feast with Jonathan and Beverly, the new parents of Johnny, born 18 days into June, anniversary of Etta's birth, the grandmother I lost during my first trip abroad. Much later, at a table detailed with red rose petals, I savored the ceremony of Moroccan mint tea. But I fell in love with mint while I carried my son Ivan. His name is John too, but in Russian. I called my Russian grandfather Honey because my mom's mom, Etta, summoned her husband Saul, no matter his mistresses, in that sweet way. The Lord is gracious, and so it is that Johnny, Jonathan, Ivan, Hank, Hans, Ian, Jack, Jean, Johann, Juan, Sean, Shane, Vanya, and Zane all mean John. The Lord is gracious. I breathe mint and mix honey into the tea I brew from the leaves my sweetheart grew in his garden. These fragrant leaves that sing, he loves me. Section 3, When It Drops You're Gonna Feel It, is rich in garden poems. This poem reflects on the aftermath of 9/11 and a mother's anguish over how to protect family members. God and the garden. Always something in the garden out of reach. Today, not tempting apples, but sweet pea pods, hiding under generous leaves and clinging to their sturdy vines. My son Ivan, born between wars, Vietnam, Desert Storm, now Iraq, works in the former shadows of the World Trade Towers, a place visited when he was 4. He stood on tiptoes, straining for the telescope, wanting even then to see the big picture. Years later, I asked him if he believed in God, and aghast, as if I had invited him to eat the white meat of that forbidden fruit. How could I question his faith? He breathed out a yes, oddly divided in 2 syllables. Before Ivan's father and I married, we met with the rabbi who united us under one name. The rabbi asked the same question: do you believe in God? To which we replied, possibly. About to graduate from college and Nam threatening to split us apart, we believed our eyes were wide open. Maybe God waited around the corner with Beckett's Godot, both cooling themselves under the tree of knowledge. We were strangely comfortable with what we did not know, and we lived far away in time from terrorists willing to go to their maker so that thousands of infidels would die. Is my son a believer? Is my daughter-in-law, who swallows the body of Christ in the form of a thin wafer, a believer? No matter what some say, we are infidels. Is there anything I can do to protect them? Watching my step, careful not to crush any living thing, I inch through the muddy rows of Maryland clay that my new husband has lovingly planted, and I struggle with what's possible to obtain, knowing uncertainty, whether good or bad, fills our buckets in greater quantity than the nourishing bounty dangling beyond my outstretched hand. Americans often avoid talking about death as if denying this natural process will keep it from happening. In the next poem, I introduce you to my cousin Donna, who knew she was going to die early and told her son not to bury or cremate her. My mother gets a mention in this poem too. The poem is in the form of a villanelle where certain lines or words repeat in subsequent stanzas. While adhering to the rhyme, I take liberties with the words. All-American Girl. Cousin Donna up in air, at death you said no ground, no burn. Save my body, life's not fair. Brain surgeries took big hair. Bald is stylish, my smile stern. Bogish Aunt Rona, I'm your heir. Cranioplasty, yet brain bared. Wear that helmet, don't be stubborn. Save your body, yeah, life's not fair. Michael, my son, promise me, swear, no urn, no plot, but a vault where Mama Donna is up in air. The rabbi led Hebrew prayer. 2 children, 10 grands, 1 great, earned her body rights to death with flair. Outside in cold on metal chairs, we puzzled, we tried to learn. All perfect Donna stored in air, saved her body, though life's not there. My last poem for the reading gives its title to the last section of the book, Those Dear Ones. If someone told you, someone with higher powers, and I don't mean our President of the United States, that you could pick one dearly departed one and breathe life into the missing body anew, who would you summon? The father who rescued you after you broke a leg or screamed at midnight from the dream of falling? The devoted friend who took the wheel and traveled with you on fast and foreign roads in search of hidden Mecca, where your literary hero had been a guest decades ago. The mother with high cheekbones and a smile a photographer could never shoot enough. And you wanting one more look at her to make sure. So the undertaker unwrapped the shroud, allowing you to claim her and tell the family the still woman in the box, sent from Texas to Virginia, appeared to be the kin who carried you full term. If someone told you you could designate a resurrection like a perfect politician, don't accept the gift. Gather up a crying child who lost his shoe. Those dear ones you cannot choose between will forgive you. Thank you. Thank you.
So Karen, a couple of comments. I don't know if you saw them in the chat. Barbara Goldberg said, we asked you about when a poem's finished. She said, if it still itches, it's not done. And I felt like, whoa, that's probably the best answer we've heard in a year. And then another comment, your mother seems like quite a handful. Maybe it wasn't you, Karen.
It runs in the family, I suppose. That's for sure.
Hey, Hal, did you have some questions? I know this is our time to unmute yourselves and have a conversation.
There is a question in the chat box, which I'm happy to relay.
Yeah,
If you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be?
Practice, 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 and always make room for writing. Don't let the opportunity to write slip away.
Nice.
So I have another question, please. Do you find, is there a relationship between form and content? You write in many forms, crowns, sonnets, prose poems, and so on. What comes first, the selection of a form or the content, or do they work hand in hand?
That is a really good question, Hal. The thing is that usually what happens is that the subject matter seems to ask for limitations. So the limitations I give it are form. And so if it's a really fraught subject, like for example, the poem about my cousin Donna, it seemed like it was a much better idea to put it into a limited form so that, I would not be, searching around for how do I end this? Where is this going? There's so many, things that can unbalance a poem.
There's some more comments / questions in the chat box for you, Karren. Barbara is saying that she'd really like to see these poems on the page, which is, I think common at a poetry reading is this urge to see how they're laid out on the page. And she's also wondering if your family has seen these poems.
Okay, so if you would like to see the poems on the page, you should contact me through my website, alenier.com, ALENIER.com, and look for the books, and you can click on autographed, because that's how you can, get to me directly. But, you can just go through the contact portion of the website as well. And I have slowly been showing my family some of these poems. So for example, there is a very, what I would say, difficult poem that I present in the book, which I didn't read here today, which talks about my sister who had a drug problem. And I called her up before the poem was published in an anthology this past year. And I said, would you say that it would be fair to say that you have been a bag lady? And she said, well, I guess so. And I said, well, I have this poem that I've written you into, that you are the feature of this poem. And it was a poem about how many family members died on her birthday and she was sick of it. And she was like, pick another day, quit dying on my birthday. Because, my stepfather died on her birthday. There was a cousin who died on her birthday. Then the aunt who was the mother of the cousin died. It was just not to be believed, like all these people dying on her birthday. And so anyway, so she said that she was actually pleased to see the poem because it sort of immortalized her. And she thought, she's worthy subject matter for her big sister. I don't think everybody would feel that way. But, anyway, I'm hoping to show the book to my son who hasn't seen some of these poems before and see what he thinks. And, we'll see how it works out.
So
Thank
Karren,
you.
what are you working on now?
I'm actually working on poems that are inspired by Gertrude Stein's Tender Buttons. And I'm also working on a new opera that is about the love story of Jane and Paul Bowles. So those two things are, they have their fits and starts. Because I've been giving a fair number of readings, and I do practice for the readings, it takes up a lot of time. And so then I'm not doing as much writing as I should be. I should be scheduling myself to write, from, like 9 to 10, and then, do my practice from, 11 to 12, those kinds of things. But, life intervenes, you know how it goes.
Yeah. No, very good. Very good.
I have one last question, or at least I have a question. Freud said that, artists are like cannibals and they eat uh, their conflicts or whatever. And I was thinking that in terms of your family poems, it's like you're digesting them, or you're using them not only as um, inspiration, but also to deal with a lot of the conflicts that, exist. And another word for that is cannibalism, exactly right. So I wonder how you feel about that, that they are your inspiration, but you also eat them up.
I suppose that if you want to resolve some of the things that have stressed you out, that, poetry is a good way of learning what to do about various things. And it's not like, these are revenge poems.
No.
They are, trying to be sympathetic, to the situation in some way and try to understand it from different angles. But, you write about things because, I write about things because I want to learn more about why I'm in a situation or why something is on my mind, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I suppose, you are chewing on the issues.
Oh, great. Anyone else have any questions?
I have one last question, if there's time. You mentioned your interest in Gertrude Stein and that you're continuing to write about her. One question that comes up with regard to Stein and similar poets is how important is accessibility of meaning? Should one have to work hard to solve a poem? And how do you balance making demands on the reader with taking care of the reader?
That is a very interesting question because I have noticed that as I read younger poets, that they often do not even have notes in the back of their books, but they are very difficult to penetrate poems, and you do have to put some effort into reading these works, and that there's a certain expectation at this time that if you're serious about reading a work, and if the poet is not like Billy Collins, who puts it all out there on the table, and you can take it away with you, and then it just sort of goes into the ether. But some of these other poets, make it very, very hard. And so lately I have written something called haibun, which is a Japanese form where you use a prose poem and a haiku. And so by using this combination, you can sort of give some accessibility to the subject matter in the prose poem portion, and then the condensed part, haiku, can be more mysterious. And before we go, I just want to acknowledge Mervyn Taylor, who's going to be reading with me in Poets versus the Pandemic on May the 19th. And I hope people will come and hear us together. I'm really looking forward to that reading and thankful for everybody who has assembled here today for this more private reading. Thank you.
Yeah, Karen, send us the information about the May 19th event.
Okay.
So, yeah, it seems to be all sorts of poetry things that are going on in the month of May. So now we'd love to, find ways to promote it or tell people about it. And no, good, all good things. There's more people out there reading and doing things, and it's great. It's great, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen, very much for joining us today. And John, thank you to you as always for bringing poetry into our afternoons. And thank you to our guests.
Yeah, Karen, very great. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who was here.
Thank
Have a
you.
lovely afternoon, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.